What up, roomies? I feel like everybody's been in a situation where they've argued with somebody they care about. And halfway through it, you're like, how did we even get here? You're not being heard, they're not being heard, and somehow something small turns into something big. Today's guest believes most arguments aren't even about the actual issue, they're about something deeper that never gets said. She's the creator of the relationship repair language, a framework that helps people understand what's really happening during conflict and, more importantly, how to actually fix it. Today we're going to talk about why communication breaks down, why people walk away from relationships that could have been easily saved, and how to repair instead of repeat. La- Lazina, welcome to Neighbors. How you doing, my love?
Thank you. I'm doing so well. Thank you so much for your introduction. I love that. I also love how you shared, like people walk away from a relationship that can be saved. And
Yeah.
it can be so exciting to explore. So I'm excited to be here with you. Thank you.
I'm excited to have you on because this is like a big topic that a lot of people really don't take serious, and especially with those that and of course I'm accused of it, and most people are. Is like, one little mishaps breaks up a great relationship, and you're there wondering how could I fixed it? How could I, maybe toned it down a little bit to actually get the communication through? And a lot of
Yeah,
people just don't have those skills.
I
You know
agree.
what I mean? So when it
Yeah.
comes down to it, it's great that you're here. I know that the roomies are gonna enjoy this, and we're gonna, chop it up.
All right, let's do
All
it.
right, let's do the thing. So, why do most arguments feel like they escalate so fast, even when they start off with something small?
What I've learned is that at the center of an argument, there's two people arguing, right? But really and
Yeah,
truly, what it is two little children activated. There's a moment in childhood where there's been a unacknowledged emotional impact, and that stays in the body. And as we're learning more with neuroscience and how the nervous system regulates, but before when that argument is happening, somebody is not feeling heard, somebody's not feeling important, somebody's feeling like the relationship is at risk and it's my fault, somebody might be feeling blamed, and they don't know how to navigate those. And they tend to come out in behaviors. And the
yeah.
behavior is just a trigger, but we tend to keep make behaviors and feelings the same thing, and we end up getting stuck there. So I believe it's just because two people are mismatching in energy at that moment, and they never had a language to even understand how to do that differently.
No, I get that. And how important is it to like understand like your partner or your loved one's language? That way, you could kind of like squash the beef.
Yeah. I mean, it is important because like we have nowadays, right? There's the love languages that teaches us how we like to receive love. And a lot of times I think couples are engaging in those kind of curiosity to see what my partner wants or how they receive love. And then there's the attachment style, which is the one that teaches us how we sabotage love. So, I I just don't think that we ever learn how to receive. We don't, like, if I'm angry, you may want to fix it, right? You may want to solve whatever it is. You may want to under like you may want to remove the reason why I'm angry, but at the same time what I need is to feel empathy, to feel understanding, to feel heard. I mean, and that's different for everybody because each of
Yeah.
us have our own experiences in life that shapes our needs. So we never knew what emotional needs were. We never learned we didn't really have our emotional needs met when we were little. And so eventually that when we're not having that need met, it starts to come out in behaviors. And if we're designed to be in connection. We're not supposed to not be in connection. We're not supposed to, walk away from one another. Ultimately, we want to feel belong. We want to have community. We want to expand. This is not a journey to do alone. So it's very important to learn how we can receive from one another, so that we can actually practice compassion and forgiveness and bring love into the space when there's conflict. Because there are times, like, this the other day, someone was I was talking to someone,
Yeah.
and they were we were relating to each other. And so when I started to relate, I noticed whenever I share something vulnerable, it tends to make men want to solve it, or, like, tell me how to, like, not look at it differently. And so I simply said, like, when you do that, I know that you mean well, but when you tell me how I should feel or how I should do it differently, we're no longer in relation. It almost feels like, I need to do something different, and I don't feel the connection. And then that makes me not want to share more or open up more, because then I'm afraid that I'm going to get corrected instead of, like, being in the moment, because we were just relating to one another. And he got very upset, and he was like, well, and that was it. He was like, oh, so you don't know how to give grace, you're not practicing what you preach, and all of this. And it went sideways. And I'm like, no, I'm just telling you what is happening right now. It's now I'm opening up the space for that to be different. I'm not attacking. I'm not trying to say this is what you're doing and this is how you should do it differently. I'm just sharing that in this moment now we just don't have connection anymore, because you're just telling me what to do, and that doesn't feel relational. And I think that's something that isn't practiced a lot. Like, again, like I said, we just don't have the name for it. We never really had that missing gap to really bring the connection back together. One person feels rejected, and then the other person either gives up or gets an attitude, or, I mean, just end up getting in a mismatch again.
Now I get that because when you brought that story up, it actually gave me a flashback, and I was just like, I learned that lesson. Sometimes, guys who's listening to it, sometimes it's better just to like listen and shut up. Don't give advice. Just chill out, take everything in, and just relax. Because sometimes it's not even a thing of advice. It's just that you want to vent. You just want to say what you got to say. And I learned this because one of my you know ex girlfriend of mine pointed that out to me one time when me and her weren't arguing, but she was venting about her day. And I was like, hey, yo, babe, maybe you should try this. Maybe you should try that. And she was like, yo, I don't want advice. I just want to talk it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's it's also not guys' fault. Like, I mean, I'm not a man hater or anything like that. I
Yeah.
have reparented my father wounds and fallen in love with my masculine energy, which allows me to have more empathy towards guys and understand where they're coming from. So it's I want to say it's a genetic or whatever thing, because guys are built for to be protectors. Like, that's a masculine trait, right? To fix things, to solve, to provide safety. They're like, as soon as they're born, before they're even born, they got to carry on a legacy, and then they have to have uber responsibility thrown on them. So at what point did they learn any of that? And a woman speaks heart language. A woman, I want to feel heard. I want to feel felt. I want to feel understood. Especially now in my life, I have a big vision, and when somebody has a vision, problem solving is not going to help, because you're solving for something here, but I'm solving for something here, and this might interrupt what's going to happen there. So we have to look at the bigger picture first before we can go and figure out what the solve is. And I think that can be something that separate note that interrupts the current way we market. So it's again, it's neither gender's fault. We just were never given a roadmap. We come into this world, and I don't know if you've ever heard of the Dr. Gabor Mate. He talks a lot about how children are supposed to come into the world and learn unconditional love, and
Mm.
but to be believed in, and to have a safe space. Well, when I think about every single person that we know, every single one of us has had a different experience. And some of the things that I've learned is from 0 to 3 is when we learn, our nervous system learns safety, but we learn our emotional needs. That's why babies cry and we rely on someone else. But depending on the generation you grew up in, your parents might have been busy, they're in survival mode, they're not emotionally present. Some people have very abusive family members. There's so many different neglect that's happened, these emotional impact that happen. So our nervous system, our emotional needs are already coming into a state. And even those parents who give their children everything, there's still trauma there because that child never learns that they can do it on their own. There's always that fear that they're going to do it wrong or they can't do it right. So by the time we're age 7, our limiting belief is already like set. And then by 13, this is our teenager that takes up this belief that says, this is who I am. I'm either ashamed of the person I am, or I'm not good enough, or whatever that is, and whatever that protective behavior is, that's what ends up becoming our adult self whenever we get triggered. So when two people are arguing, there's so much to consider there. Somebody is not having a need met. And what is that need? That need is down to that person. Like, that is so personal. There's no way to just say this is everybody's needs.
No, I get that completely because, yet again, just going back to what, just piggybacking off of what you were saying, when you're growing up, especially ages, and I'm gonna just do like age 0 to 13.
Yeah.
You go through certain traumas. You go through, maybe unconditional love is not met. You go through all these things, and it kind of like fortifies in your subconscious. And and that comes out when you're in a heightened emotional state, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Especially even if you've worked on yourself, some of those could always come back when you're in the heat of the moment, and you may say or do things that may not be in your current character but was part of your past character.
Exactly. you know
Mm.
and a lot of those energy, they're stored. So it's like, we also, it's important for us. I see, the thing is, I want to remove shame. I can't. So we have our feelings. We're not going to be able to get rid of our feelings because feelings are messengers, regardless of what they come out. Anger to the surface might be I lack boundary, but anger may also be that I felt disrespected. I'm not honored here. Or it could also be, this is something that I'm really passionate about, and this is the fuel that gets me, to point A to point B, and to take care of my task. So those are not things that we are going to not experience. But when we don't look at ourselves, and sometimes people say go to therapy, and that's like a little bit of a resistance, because for so many reasons you got to find the right therapist and stuff like that. But when it's time to like really go inwards, it's not just self development, personal awareness. It's also learning from curiosity, because the shame is always going to come up. And so shame is trying to block us from growing. So it's important for me as a parent, and as a friend, or whatever role that I'm playing, to learn how my behavior is showing up for other people. Because when I'm mad, I'm not really knowing what that's doing. I don't see my body language. If I'm communicating from resentment, I might be like this, and I
Yeah.
may say, I may know how to control my emotions and know how to behave in public, right? To say, let's say you and I are in an argument and we're sitting down with people in front of us, and I can't be mad at you, but I'm mad at you. And I'm like, yeah, he's a good guy. We always have good times, and I feel supported by him. But in the way that I'm saying, my body language, my eye contact, it is showing some deep resentment. And so those experiences are felt, and there's different dynamics, right? So if it's two people. So what is that experience like for you? What is that experience like for me? So to be able to enter that kind of space, to be able to explore without taking blame or want to defend, and being able to have the conversation that goes beyond it, to see what the other person's experience is like. I need to be very open to that, and know that I'm going to hear things that I don't agree with. I'm i am going to want to be right. I'm going to want to prove myself. I'm going to want to be heard. I'm going to want you to see that that wasn't my intention. And regardless of it wasn't my intention, it was still my behavior, and that is what affected the space. So for two people to be able to do that, I feel like that's why they need a language, which is why I created the relationship repair language.
No, I get that. And do you find that most people have a hard time kind of like building that language with each other, especially with like lovers or even a parent and child? Do you feel that most people have a difficulty like learning their other person's like repair language and all that?
Yeah, I and this is another gap that I see is that when someone like I'm say we and I are in a relationship, and so
Mm.
I'm gonna go on my personal development journey and I want to learn, and maybe you don't want to learn, and so everything now that I'm learning, whether it's a book I'm reading, whether it's a quiz I'm taking, I'm gonna take it with in mind of how you make me feel or
True.
what you're doing. So I'm not even looking at that from the like right lens. And so um I think engaging that person in that learning is what makes the difference, because then you're getting to understand things about them that you didn't know. I You get to understand things about me that you didn't know, and it becomes an exploration if we look at it from that lens. But if we look
Mhm.
at it from this is why you behave this way, or with blame or with resentment, because things have piled up for so long, or they was we're not starting over from fresh, we're not being present in the moment, like this is something that my son and I practice a lot of, is that if we have a disagreement, when we come back to talk, we want to be so present with each other that when he shares his experience or what it was like for him, I'm not immediately going out of that and staying triggered and then interrupting to defend myself in that moment, because I'm no longer present with how my behavior is. I am only present in the space, but emotionally, I am not present.
I got you on that. And by the way,
Yeah.
may I ask, how old is your son?
He's 17.
All right, so he's pretty grown, right?
Yeah.
And what I felt like around that age is around the same time like me and my parents started like connecting more on an adult wave, and they started, understanding my language when I started understanding theirs, especially with like me and my dad. Like me and him had a really rough patch when I was around that age, but now we that's one of my best friends. I can't even lie.
Yeah.
But it's very important, and roomies, it's very important for you to like learn, whoever you love, their language, because of the fact that you don't want to ruin that relationship, right? And do you find that people have like a resistance to actually, or they just don't want to like learn their other person's love language, like they just want to be right?
Yeah, some people, and that's the what you said is correct. Some people want to be right rather than be in relationship, and while those are, I believe there's a lot of shame that's being hidden there, because when I'm trying to blame someone, it's because I'm ashamed of myself or something that's coming up that's bringing up shame for me. I'm resistant to it. What I will say, when I was resistant to it, it was a lot of shame for me, and it
Yeah,
could be different for everybody else. But there's this like resentment that's saying that if I need to look at myself, then there are things that I'm gonna have to face that I'm not gonna like, and I would rather blame somebody else than do that. I would I would rather like, make it about someone else. And so those are, sometimes those are relationships that we have to walk away from. Just because it's the repair, I teach about repair language. It's also I repair with self, because what that person is experiencing, they have to go inward and heal. There's so much about our attachment styles and our inner child wounds, our mother wounds and our father wounds, that are present in how we receive and how we communicate. So to be able to go into a relationship and not be willing to learn the other person, I think then why go into a relationship? Because that's
big
if that's
facts.
your person, if that's somebody that you are dreaming about having a life with and you want to create with, why wouldn't you want to know about them? Why wouldn't you want to know what makes them sad, what makes them angry, what makes them resentful, what when they feel overwhelmed, what kind of support they need? Because you wouldn't want them to feel unsupported. You'd want the same for you. So, if that's not possible, then do some repair with yourself, because it's not going to work with anybody.
I feel you on that. And w- it what's the importance of, because I have this theory, right? A lot of people, when they get into like a very serious relationship, they start identifying themselves within that relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
How important is it for like each partner to remember that they're an individual, with different needs from their partner?
Yeah. I mean that again, that's super important because as I've learned that I I didn't know that I was codependent. I didn't even know what codependency was. I didn't know that I needed a partner to fulfill me because I grew up watching Bollywood movies. It's all about like love and some dude is going to come save me and like no. No. So it's to go back to I lost my train of thought there for a second. Can you help me get back on
Yep.
track? What was the
You
question
said
again?
you were watching Bollywood,
Yeah.
waiting for the guy to come and save you, and on the
Yeah.
importance of each partner remembering that they're an individual and learning their love language.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Like we put so much expectation on another person where I'm saying that I don't know that I have emotional needs, but whatever they are, you're responsible for them. And
Mm.
if you don't meet them, I'm going to punish you for it.
Even though you're
And
not aware of them.
exactly. That's what the behaviors are. So, you're going to go into a relationship. You have to know that you're going to be meeting shadows of yourself. It's going to trigger you. Like, there's going to be plenty of things that trigger. There's this, I go to an inner child workshop every 2 months. My children have been through this. It's part of our healing work that we've done so that we can, get back to being have relational loyalty. And
Mm.
what we've learned is that there's like there's a moment in life that happened where we have that limiting belief, but that belief was like a resentment towards our parents or anger or something, and we never had um the understanding of it. Like we never saw it logically, and we never connected with that moment emotionally, and we didn't experience it out throughout our body. Meaning, like, let's say dad yelled at you or me, and I got a spanking, but in that moment I didn't feel heard, I didn't feel important, I didn't feel like I deserved this. It was an injustice.
Mm.
So dad never came and said, how do you feel? And I'm really sorry that happened. Let's try again. I really didn't like how I behaved, or whatever, offering that he could do at that moment. If he never did that, that stays. And whenever we're arguing or we're triggered, that's what comes out. And it shows up in our with our coworkers, our friends, anyone that we're really close to, that we allow ourselves to feel seen with, it comes out. And so to when two people are in a relationship, that's two inner child who's never had emotional needs met, and they don't know what it is, and they're trying their best to say love me, and the other one is saying I'm not safe, this is not safe to love, but I don't know, but I want to love you, and the other one is saying please don't go, I don't want to be abandoned. So it's like
Yeah.
there's so many different limiting beliefs and experiences that shape those beliefs that's going to show up.
No, I get that. So
Yeah.
what was the like catalyst that that made you actually put together the love repair language,
Okay, so
the
the
relationship
cat.
repair language. I'm
Yeah.
sorry about
Yeah. Well, I realized I was practicing it, but I didn't have a name for it. And
that.
I was dating a guy, and then he broke up with me, and then I waited for him, and then he came back into my life, and then he walked away again. So
Oh,
at that moment I was like, bro, what why is it that people leave when it gets hard? Like that was like the belief in me, right? Like when things get hard, people leave. And so I sat down, I was like, this is a person who like really opened my eyes to a lot of ways to be more in relationship and connecting with each other. And I felt like I was meeting a lot of his needs. Like we would watch movies, and when we finished watching the movie, we would kind of like dissect it and like, how does this show up for us, and relate to it. Same thing with TV shows, poems, books. Like we would do this. So when we were doing that, I was learning about him, and I was present. And whenever we would get into arguments or something, I would try to share where it's coming from, but he would not be able to receive it. And I'm not like, I'm still trying to protect his name here, but I felt like when he was triggered or if he was behaving a certain way that I felt that most people would say would be red flags, I would go immediately, but I understand this is coming from childhood. I know what that little boy experienced, and I would give him love and compassion, but he would not be able to receive it. And then
Mm,
I think about all the times when I wasn't able to receive it. And then also I started, practicing all the things I was learning with him with my kids, and I was noticing how they were receiving it because we were actually doing it together, and it took a while, but it was working. Like my youngest daughter has a specific way that her needs to be met, and for her, one she's an avoidant and so am I, and so we would
yeah.
argue a lot. And of course she's me when I was a teenager, right? So one day we
Your
had an
twin.
argument, and my twin, and she's a twin too. So
Oh man.
yeah, so she went to her room, and I was like, oh great, this is going to be another long drawn out, we're not going to talk to each other for 4 weeks type of thing. And then I went to her and I was like, can I just try? I asked her, I was like, what is it that you need? Do you know what your needs are in this moment? What could you possibly need and that isn't being met? And I was curious about it. And she said she didn't know. And of course she wouldn't know. She was so 15, 16. And
Yeah.
so I was like, well, can I try something? And what I tried was I sat with her next to her and I hugged her and I shared with her a moment where I, as a teenager, experienced this very same thing. And I felt her entire body softened. And in that moment, I realized that she received. And this was the same feeling that I had. The same guy I was dating at one time, he apologized to me for something that he felt responsible for. And he told me the next day that he felt my body softened. And so I started to pay more attention to what is it that how we receive. So my daughter now, her nervous system is very locked up and being judged and feeling ashamed and feeling blamed, and a lot of experiences that she's had with me that
Yeah.
caused those, and her other parent too. So um this is a very long story, but
I'm here for it.
good. So I noticed that the best way to communicate with her, especially when she is going to hear something that she's not going to like, that's going to sound like blame, is to text it, because then she can read it and control her reaction. If I were to share something with her that I feel like would be correcting, right? As a
Yeah.
parent, immediately her whole body would, like, she can't handle it, she's shaking, she's getting mad, anger is coming out. But texting her does, like, it started to help. So I started noting that, like, her nervous system need more like soothing before she can receive. So in so many ways, the repair language is giving a name to what we need. So when emotions get high and we're in that triggered state, we can actually be able to explore it together with presence, and like have a chance to really understand and repair, not just understand each other's perspective. I see why you did that, I see why we behave this way, like conflict resolution, but actually repair, take ownership, or offer clarity, offer understanding, offer empathy, being in that space with each other, like, and clean it up. So
Yeah.
before you move on, this is not something that's pent up and it comes up in the next argument that you always do this, or you always do that.
No, I got you. I got you.
Yeah.
And do you find that there's a lot of resistance when it comes to like couples or parents like sharing that space and like trying to like kind of how can I say it? Not soften it, but like kind of like work through it and repair it.
There is a lot of resistance, and I think for myself, as speaking as a parent, why it was resistant for me was because there was a lot of shame were coming up.
Yeah.
I didn't. I know that I wasn't a very emotionally present mother when my children were younger, and I was also very aggressive and abusive type of parenting style. So, to be able to sit there and go through that meant that I needed to look at myself. And once I started to forgive myself and practice more of those healing tools that I've learned. It allowed me to, like, be able to look at my children or anybody who has something to share with me as their experience, not my experience. Like, I have my experience and I may disagree with it, but it's still like, a friend call you and they want to talk and you're listening to them because you're listening for their experience, putting myself in their shoe and understanding. But that when parents are resistant, it's that shame, because a lot of parents also don't want to go back to inner child work because it kind of sounds like you're blaming your parents, and
Yeah.
it's really not. I want to offer a little bit on that. It's not that you're blaming your parents, it's just acknowledging an emotional impact that's happened that was never acknowledged. Whether mom and dad was doing their best or they weren't around or whatever the situation is, it still happened, and it just needs to be acknowledged, and that's it. So and then when it comes to couples, I find that a lot of couples don't want to have that disdain of like, oh, something's wrong with us or we're not a good couple. We don't want to show that. That's like the facade, because this isn't really, while it's repair language, it's not necessarily for broken relationships. I've always believed that when you care about somebody and you want to learn about them, you go to therapy beforehand,
Yeah.
find out what it could be, figure out how to make it work, bring the real things to the table. So I find that couples are resistant to that because then people will know that they're not having a good relationship, or, there's all this self judgment that comes around it. And then I also, there's a lot there because we've been hurt so much by other people, and we go into, like, we get out of one relationship. I've always learned that once you finish one relationship, you take 30 days and you really look and see, well, what was my role in it? Whether I was the one who was being, I felt to be, I'm the victim of that person, or they're wrong and I'm right. There's still a role that I played in this. And that role might be that I sacrificed my needs. I didn't speak up for myself, or I people please. By people pleasing, I never shared how I was really feeling. The other person never knew how I was feeling. There's so many different nuances to that. So we end up carrying that hurt to another relationship, and then we make these rules that we're never going to settle for this, or we're never going to, I'm not settling for that. And then we start to set boundaries, but we put the boundaries as walls. Um, Instead of, a boundary for me is that I care about this relationship and I want to honor it. And this is the best way that I know how to. If you have something that you would like to offer that can meet me, I'm happy to consider it because I value you.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
No, I got that. And well, I feel that, or at least from experience, I feel that there's a difference between a boundary and a defense. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, of course, you're bound. Common boundaries is, don't put your hands on me, don't disrespect me, don't call me on my name, things of that nature. But then you have
Mm-hmm.
other defenses where you have, yo, I don't like it when you do this, and it could be something minute, very small. You know what I mean? And that would trigger that person. But instead of them working on themselves and kind of seeing where that trauma is coming from, they'll have everybody else kind of like locked into that like
Mm-hmm.
momentum for their comfort.
Yeah, I have to adjust everything that I am so that I can meet you in that. So I have to walk on eggshells. I don't have safety to be myself because I'm afraid now that I'm going to trigger you instead of, yeah, like, why is this even triggering me in the first place? Because that trigger is coming from some unhealed part. And then now I rob myself of the opportunity to, like, really enjoy another person because I'm triggered by that thing that I'm not willing to look at.
And that's so true. And like,
Yeah.
how often do you see people like put up those walls and it'll be like catastrophic for like their next relationship?
All the time. That's why I'm so passionate about this, this framework, because I feel like it's we end up losing out on some really beautiful things that we can grow together with. Like, life is definitely a journey, and there's some elements of this where we need to learn, and we have to have the experiences in order for us to learn. I
Yeah,
wouldn't be able to fully receive and believe in gratitude and experience gratitude if I didn't experience what sorrow and despair and agony was, you know?
true.
So, it is a journey, and it's important for us to go on that journey. Sometimes when we lose people, that's when we find ourselves. And that, while that is true, we can also go on a journey and be intentional with it too.
Yeah,
Okay, a trigger happens. Why? Let's get curious. Let's trigger the frick out of each other and see what comes up so we can really get to the underlying issue. And that's not something that we were ever taught. I don't think it's something that just anybody have the recipe book for. And it's not the recipe book because everybody's going to be triggered for a different reason.
that's an absolute fact. And
Mm-hmm.
parents, people, individuals, we're not perfect. We're all human, and we make mistakes. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't forgive anybody from growing. You know what I mean? And the thing that people are most afraid of, or at least what I've been, or at least a common theme I've seen, is that growth is pain.
Mm-hmm.
Good growth, bad growth. Growth is pain. You'll lose something, but you'll gain something in return. In this
Yeah.
case, I'm seeing it as like, you know, I might be addressing a childhood trauma or a teenage trauma or something of that nature, but at the end of the day, I'm getting closer to my partner. I'm getting closer to my child. I'm getting closer to my parent because I was able to go over this hurdle and finally say, okay, I see.
Yeah. And feel supported too, you know. Can I
Yeah.
can I share a little bit of my framework on
Yeah, of course, of
how
course.
so I believe that whenever we're going through a trigger or we have to do trauma healing work, right?
Yeah,
Sometimes you want to talk to somebody and you're crying and you're sad or you're going through like the roughest time or you're angry, whatever that is, and you go to talk to somebody about it, they take it personally or they dismiss it or they tell you what to do, like, oh, you got to believe in God, or, this is why you're going to it. And they offer you a solution and things like that. And that amplifies the anger or the sadness even more. But in reality, in that moment, you're not feeling heard, you're not feeling seen, you're not feeling valued. You're just like alone even more. Like, why did I even go to this person? Now I need to deal with this all on my own. And then sometimes they don't have the capacity. But what I like to do is invite people to this table. And I call it a table, the repair table in my own like language,
yeah,
because I want to remove the blame and the shame. I want to bring in curiosity. So
yeah,
when we sit at this table and we learn about each other, how do you behave when you're angry? How you behave when you're sad? How do you go through all the emotions? But I stick to the four, the ones that cause the most conflict: resentment, overwhelm, anger, and sadness. When you're doing that, when you are angry, what is it that you need? What is it that your body is feeling? And how would you like to feel supported? So now, the next time you're angry, if you like to feel supported because you need a space to vent, then I got you,
true.
right? Because I understand that pain is necessary. And I think there was a quote that you said, and sometimes, not sometimes, whenever we are in a trigger or we're experiencing something, it needs to be expressed. It needs to be witnessed. It needs to be acknowledged. When those things happen, then we can get to the underlining of what we really need in those moments and what would make us feel supported. So, or how we can receive and how we can move through it. So, as a couple, I think it's a beautiful way of being able to support your person while they're going through their journey. You're on the journey together. You're not fixing it, you're not solving it. Even if that person is the trigger, stepping aside and knowing that the trigger needs to happen so that we can understand what's under it, right? So it's like um, there's this practice that we do, and my daughters and I, sometimes my son will do it too. If my child is angry, I'm gonna trigger them. I'm gonna get them even more angry because I know that they just need to get it out.
Yeah.
Now you have to do that safely, right? Because
Yeah,
not
of course.
everybody can do that. But
Yeah.
as a but that's one of the repair languages, space. It can mean that I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on with me right now. I'm gonna come back. I promise you. I'm gonna just go and figure out what's wrong with me. I just need some space. But the other one is like, I need space. I need the space to vent. I need the space to throw a tantrum. I need the space to cry and bellow out and say it from the raw, pure emotion and have it witnessed. And have that person sit there with me if I'm crying and they're holding me and allowing me to go through that. Or the same thing, like if I'm mad, trigger me so that I can figure out what's going on. Or like if I'm overwhelmed, help me write down my priority list, whatever that is. But of course, the way to support has to come from me. I have to be able to say what I need so I can feel supported. But then we get to do that together. We get to have that conversation ahead of time so that when the triggers do happen, we're not we now have tools so that we can prepare for it, or we have in the moment we can repair. It doesn't have to be something that ends up us fighting each other or blaming one another, or say I'm not feeling supported by my partner, or I never feel supported by my partner, they don't have capacity to hold me, because we're building it together. And that's kind of the framework that I really encourage a lot of people to follow.
No,
And
that,
mhm.
no, I was going to say that's amazing. And you were saying?
Yes. Oh, I when there that same relationship I was telling you about, I was seeing a therapist because it just wasn't going well for me, and
Yeah.
so I spoke to the therapist, and the therapist was like, "Lazina, why aren't you asking for your needs to be met?" And I was like, "What the heck are my needs? I don't even know what the hell my needs are." So I have this is also part of what I can accompany someone with, right? I have a way to map those needs out because it's heavily tied to our love languages. And so some people will say, my love language is physical touch, or I need my partner to meet my physical needs. But that's not really what physical touch means. Physical touch is also how you feel comforted. How do you feel loved and appreciated in a way that makes you come alive or makes you feel safe, emotionally safe. um what's the other one? Quality time. It's not just we're sitting down together, we're like hanging out, we're on our phone, whatever that case is, or we're having an activity. It is that I feel like I am part of your community. I feel connected to you. I feel belonged. I feel like I have a place here. I'm significant and I'm important. So, to be able to go to those deeper layers into understanding what our actual emotional needs are, we have to map it out to our love languages. Even like my lowest scoring love language was zero. It was gift receiving. I had to
Mm.
go and look at that. It wasn't zero. It was zero because when I was 6 years old, I created this belief that my father, I attached my worth to a present. I saw my father passing a gift over the fence, and I thought it was for me, and then I found out later that it wasn't. Somebody told me that it was for a daughter that he had with someone else. So in that moment, I made a decision that I was never going to receive a gift. And so the whole time I'm saying my love language is zero. My ex-husband tried to gift me things. Oh my God, there's one time he got me a cake. I threw the cake away. Like I was horrible at receiving gifts. I
I'm,
was
I agree.
sabotaging.
I agree with you. I'm very horrible at receiving gifts as well.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the thing is like that's an exchange of love. Someone is showing me love. They're showing me effort, and I'm over here like ungrateful. But really and truly, it's that moment that I made my worth was attached to receiving. So it's like understanding what the true needs really are, and being able to give them to myself, and then having someone who's along the journey that can witness me, can see, like, that moment that was really hard for me.
Yeah,
And now look at me, I overcame it. We can celebrate together. So it doesn't have to be daunting, it can be like an exploration.
yeah, true. And all right, because I've always asked about like the resistance part of it, but when a partnership or parents with their children or partners get together and they actually work at it, right? How what's the outcome of it? Like, how does it look like previous to like repairing everything to like at, to like the outcome of it?
Well, I will tell you about in 2019,
Yeah,
I never thought that I would see my oldest daughter again.
I'm sorry.
Our relationship was over. She didn't feel safe with me no matter what I did. It wasn't really being received. I could feel her heart. I could feel like we were still there, but there was just this resistance that it was, things were not safe. And now she's my best friend.
Oh, that's beautiful.
She's she's my person. She knows she knows me more than anybody else. We have the most amazing conversations, and she's kind of in her own world right now. But if she was here talking to you, it's why we started our Breaking the Cycles podcast.
That's
To
what's up.
show people that this is, you can overcome this. This is not something that has to be lost forever. Every relationship that's worth saving, it took work. It wasn't overnight. There was a lot of meeting her, getting rejected, me parenting from guilt, parenting from shame, all of that. And to be fully transparent, 7 years, 6 years ago, my ex-husband called me to tell me that he had a very inappropriate relationship with her when she was underage, and
Oh
that
no.
resulted in our whole family breaking up. And I was like, well, what this doesn't when sexual abuse happens in a family, it doesn't just affect the survivor, it affects the whole entire family. She has siblings, dad's no longer around, sister's gone. Like, it was a journey for us to get back
Yeah,
to the wholeness of our family. And then and that was also a part of my wake up call, because I was like, what role did I play in this? Why wasn't my daughter safe to come to me and share with me what happened, or how did it even get there?
yeah,
And so there was, like, while what he did wasn't okay, there was still responsibility on my part, and being able to look at that without and reparent myself, forgive myself, go get through the hard. It reshaped my whole relationship with my twins as well. Like, this is why we have that relational loyalty now. We have such a better connection, and that would not have been possible if I hadn't done the work myself, but also show up for them and start parenting them for what they needed, not what I needed.
true, true. I get you on that, and I could relate to that a lot because me and my dad, and this is going back, like me and him never had like the best relationship. He was one of those dads that, yeah, I'm your father, I live with you, but there's not really any interaction there.
Mm-hmm.
But later on in life, me and him were able to like connect, and he worked a lot on himself. I worked a lot on myself because I wasn't the easiest kid. I'm gonna be honest. I wasn't the
I
easiest kid.
mean, you did. I don't. If I go back to my 17-year old self, I have some shame.
Oh
But
yeah,
continue.
yeah, yeah. But
I'm sorry, mommy. I love you.
and roomies, I hope this never come, you guys never deal with the same thing I dealt with. Me and him, had a physical altercation twice, but I felt that through those physical altercations, that's when me and him kind of like got this respect for each other, and were able to finally like bridge the gap, that the miscommunication that me and him had. And that's like one of the craziest ways of doing it, but I guess me and him were just at that point. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But now, like I said, one of my best friends, love the guy.
Yeah,
That's my dad.
it's your daddy. And
Yeah,
but
you know.
I'm curious about what was it that you needed him to know when you
I,
guys were, I mean, in general, like,
I
for
think it
that.
was just. I think, to be honest with you, I think it was just the fact that I wanted to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
Like being
Mm-hmm.
totally honest, I think it was just the fact that I wanted to be seen and like noticed by him
Mm-hmm.
versus I'm just us just living together and
Yeah.
the little bit of interaction that we had with each other. I think it was more of the I wanted him to be present versus just being around. And mind you, my parents 40 years of marriage, beautiful.
Yeah.
He's always been a couple of feet away from me, but when you're that close in proximity, that distance feels light years away.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's true. And not to this isn't to this say that your parents were at fault or anything, because that's
No, no, no.
something that I also had to face. It's not a blame your parent forever kind of thing. It's just like I wanted to feel seen. Fathers teach us how to love ourselves.
Yeah.
Mothers teach, and that's the energy, the father energy and the mother energy. The mother energy teaches how to nurture others, so they're directly linked to how we love ourselves and love other people. And so they never had the language too. I always tell people, I at age 7, right, formed this belief that my father didn't want me, and I made decisions and made choices that reinforced that belief. And the whole time, my dad was murdered when he was 30.
Yeah.
He didn't have electricity, like maybe
Yeah.
until he was in his 20s, right? So what would he, and I think Humble the Poet said this, what would he have known for emotional awareness, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And
Like
so, mhm,
like my dad came from, the rural area of the Dominican Republic where people are not educated or emotionally educated or,
mhm,
emotionally developed, I would say.
right,
You know what I mean? So when he came over here, he didn't know how to connect with his kids or like, how to be super dad.
yeah,
Now that he's at the age that he is, he's grown and whatnot. He wants to, and me and him had the discussion where he pulled me to the side. He's like, "Yo, listen, when you have your children, I'll make sure that I don't fuck up the way I fucked up with you." And that's all I could really ask for. You know what I mean?
yeah, an acknowledgement. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's
You
all it
feel
is.
me?
And that's really all it is. Like a lot of people will have this resistance to forgiving their parents, and I mean, forgiveness is such a huge thing because I had to be in the space for it. I remember when that stuff happened with my family. I was seeing a therapist, and she was like, "You have to forgive," and I'm like, "I don't know, forgive." Like I didn't want to hear about forgiveness because at the
Yeah.
time, the emotional impact wasn't acknowledged for me. But once I had that emotional impact acknowledged, I was able to do that for myself. Now I'm open to forgiveness. And so when people are resistant to forgiving their parents, there's so much resentment there, and they're robbing themselves of something really beautiful. But what's needed in that space is to go back and blame your parents just for whatever that the one thing that they did that pissed you off. You just have to acknowledge that
Yeah.
from that child's perspective, not the adult, from the child. Like, here's this little kid who just wanted, like, running home trying to show his mom or dad the report card, and then when he got home they were like, oh, you didn't get an A, and that as an emotional impact, that creates so much not good enough and things like that. So, it's just being able to, like, go back to that moment and blame your parent for that, and then come back. I'm like, oh, yeah, they because, like, I always, when I started to do inner child work, I had some resistances to myself because I was like, well, my mom wasn't bad. Like, my mom was abused, but I didn't know that what I learned from my mom was to be subservient, to play small, to settle for crumbs, so it wasn't like I needed to blame my mom for that. I needed to acknowledge that that's what I picked up, and that's how that hurts my relationships now, and how I sabotage in that way.
No, so it's extremely true because now I feel that. All right, and this is me comparing, the 1900s to 1999 from like
Yeah.
2000 to today, right? During that century, human society itself has developed so much as far as like emotional state, mental state, and all those,
Hmm.
and people feeling safe. Where now in 2026, we're able to have the conversation of, I have childhood trauma. I have
Yes.
this, that, and the third. I have this, that, and the third. When, 50 years ago, if you're, a grown man and you're talking about, hey, I have childhood trauma, the most you'll get is man up. You're a man. Get to it,
Mm-hmm.
get to it, my guy. And the ladies as well. They'll be like, oh, just, ignore it, let it go, forgive them, whatever. And there was never a process of actually working out the emotions. Now that we're in 2026, we have developed the mental capacity as a society to say, okay, cool, we know that our emotional state and our mental state affects our physical state. So we have to treat it there before we treat the body. Because if
Mm-hmm.
not, if our nervous system is always, in survival mode or in flight mode, fight or flight, you're never gonna get past certain things and be able to open yourself to other things.
Exactly. And that coherence needs to happen. That under you have to have the understanding, so that's where the logic comes in, and then feeling that experience, like feeling it out, allowing your body to process through it, and like really letting that out experientially, whether it's somatic, whether it's dancing, whether it's going outside and beating a tree. Don't beat a tree, but
Don't
to have the mind, body, and physical, the heart, mind, and the physical um, release of that. It's incredible, and I'm really glad that we do have the language. We're now in a, like you said, in a way where people are opening up more to it. I'm really glad, because like look how much unmet needs has been happening.
Yeah, man.
Like we've just been going around. Like I said, I don't know that I have an unmet need, but you're responsible for it, and I'm gonna punish you when you don't meet it.
You feel me? And nobody needs that punishment. Well,
No, no,
Lazina,
no.
before we wrap everything up, because this hour flew by.
It did. It did.
It
It
did.
really did.
Before we wrap everything up, right? I always ask all my guests this. Do
Yeah.
you have any final thoughts, words of wisdoms, or advice for the roomies?
I mean, I go straight back to, we need a language
Yeah,
so that we know what we need. Emotional needs are important, and so if there's a quiz that I have on my website that you can take. It gives you the results right away, so that you know what you need. That's 30 questions, and they're all geared towards your emotional needs. And so whenever you're in a conflict, this is going to help you a lot to learn about that. And I also I have some free downloads on my website, laziena.com. It has a workbook for teenagers so that they can identify what their emotional needs are from a young age and kind of map that out. I also have an attachment style one, that to, how does your repair language match your attachment style. So, on the aspect of exploration and understanding how we can be in better relationship with each other, get curious, stay curious, follow the triggers. Underneath it is truly a little boy or a little girl that just wants to love or be loved, and they just don't know how to do it. And when we can start seeing each other for that and acknowledging each other's experience, and we get to live from our inner child, and we get to be access that creativity, that spark, everything that we've always dreamed of doing. We get to do that from that excitement, and we get to be in better relationship because we get to grow up together,
that's so true. That's so
essentially.
true.
Yeah.
That's so true. And roomies, remember, any relationship, whether it's with a partner, parent, child, friend, family member, whoever, that relationship takes work. You don't know everything. So sometimes it's best just to keep shut, let them talk, so y'all can have a better connection. And with that being said, peace out.